and got some issues to work through themselves in the off-season. Nick Maxwell will be kicking himself at the moment, no doubt about it. There'll be a long summer for him, missing 2 finals.
Yeah, he would. He's the captain of the footy club. Of course he'd like to have been out there, and that would be an awful feeling and a horrible feeling. They'll assess the captain, so I'm not saying that Nick deserves to lose it, but I think Scott Pendlebury's probably almost ready to assume the mantle, and Nick will go back to being the very good leader that he is. Tomo's theory, you don't have to have the title to be a great leader, but he'd be disappointed, no doubt.
And the emotions, Caro, with the sad passing, the sad funeral on Thursday, do you think that had an effect on the way they prepared?
Look, as Nathan Buckley said, and I reckon he's better to judge this than me, we'll never know just what an effect it had. There was obviously that terrible tragedy, the fact that they'd really galvanised the week before and given everything and got over the line, then had a 6-day break, had to go to Sydney after the funeral for someone that at least 6 or 7 of them loved as a very, very close friend. You can't imagine it didn't have some effect. I'm sure it did.
They paid the ultimate sacrifice, and I think over the journey that's going to have an incredibly deep effect with the playing group, and I think that what they did was the right thing to do.
Yep.
And I think they will come out the other end of it significantly better than if they hadn't have attended.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And when you listen to the reporting of it, and this is not having go at anyone, but the sort of Collingwood had to go to a funeral before they travelled back. Well, they didn't have to do anything. No, they chose to. And so they live with that, and absolutely the right
And they
decision.
played it down too. I mean, they still got to Sydney the day before the game.
Yeah.
They still did their normal.
Use it as an excuse.
They might have changed to training day, but they wouldn't, and you shouldn't take anything away from Sydney, and Nathan Buckley didn't.
Their list, Gary, for me, needs some renovating.
Where?
Over the summer. And it's a very renovatable list.
Right.
Because they've got all the key midfielders in place. Well,
who are you getting rid of?
The forward line needs some additional warriors and a third
Well, they haven't got Cloak
tall.
signed yet.
They haven't got Cloak signed.
Still a question, mate.
They need a second ruckman. Lee Brown, that role was dearly missed. Their back half are getting a bit older and they want to play one-on-one, and their ruck stocks are really thin. So, and they've got enough pawns to move around.
They've got some currency. They haven't signed...
Depth's not great either, Gaz. It used to be. It's not anymore.
Cloak, Wellingham... this is what we've led to believe. Cloak, Wellingham, O'Brien, Goldsack all remain unsigned at the moment, Tomo. Now, have they done that to give themselves the opportunity to sit down now and do an assessment, as Hutchie sort of alluded to, and maybe have some currency if they want to go to the trade table?
Yeah, look, perhaps. I think Cloak's going to stay now, is he?
Well, I don't know what he's doing.
Starting to sound more like that.
I'd be getting Goldsack done first out of all them. I just think he's a max rook at Collingwood, and he's a super player. But I also think there's a lot of upside. I think Beams will be a better player next year. I think Sidebottom will be a better player next year. You throw Luke Ball back into that team. You throw Cracker in there for a whole year. Sinclair will be improved.
Daisy, you would think, would have a better season.
Daisy Thomas would have to have a better year.
Yeah.
But even premiership teams make changes to their premiership winning team. They didn't tend to make many last year. They'd have to make some from that team that played on Friday night.
Yeah, they probably would, and I think Hutchie sort of hit at that. Maybe the second tall forward, maybe a different structure in defence, just play with that a bit. You know, it's probably not ideal in the current footy environment. And the other thing is they need another ruckman. I don't know what they're going to do with Wood. They either got to go with him and turn him into something, or
look
for
like
someone
they're
else.
going to play him, because he didn't play last night.
Can he play?
I'm not convinced, to be perfectly honest. Yeah. That might be harsh. Hey, quickly, last week we spoke about Chris Tarrant. Tomo, you and I differed on his mindset. You thought that he perhaps wasn't having a go, and that if you asked Chris Tarrant, he would probably say the same thing. Hutchie, you ran into him. Did you ask him last night?
No, I didn't have to ask him. You volunteered his thoughts pretty quickly, Gary. I don't think he was actually necessarily in agreement with me, Tomo. I was pretty happy to actually slug that out with you if you wanted to.
Oh, okay. So 2 a.m. at a nightclub somewhere in Melbourne.
We don't have to be drinking at a nightclub.
It's much later than that.
Hey, coaching.
Well, you can tell him where I live and he can come down, we can have the chat.
Exactly right, like 2 grown men.